Begin the current Daf Mesechtes Bava Metzia Daf Kuf Beis. Begin on the bottom of Kuf Alpha from a Beis, 9 lines up from the bottom of the Amud, where we continue the halacha, the next Mishnah, continuing the theme of the previous Mishnah, which opened up the discussion of Hamasker Bayis Lechaveroi. So our Mishnah continues regarding the obligations that the renter and the owner have with each other with this business transaction of the rental of the house. Should be a throughout the entire world. Everyone should have a good chodesh. Someone discussing today's daf are hamaske bayis lechaverim. Someone rents a house to his friend. Okay, so this is your classic tenant-landlord situation. Well, who has to fix what? The tenant texts his landlord. He says, by the way, the toilet's not working. So whose responsibility is that? So our mission discusses the owner is responsible for a door, for the bolt, for a lock, anything that's a ma'aseh, anything that's professional work that you have to call somebody down. That's the owner's responsibility. Don't call me because your screws are a little bit loose. Don't call me because you have these little things that you don't know how to do. If you want to put a hook on your door, you do it yourself. If it's not a ma'aseh, you got to do it yourself. Some of the other important terms of concept in today's daf are the person's courtyard requires from him even without his awareness. If it does, and what would be the parameters of that? Regarding the airspace of his courtyard requiring for him, and if you have something in between, interposing between the airspace and his ground, would that be different? Shiluch haken, the halacha of the mitzvah of sending away. Everyone has this. The robins are all around these days, all around the area here. About sending away the mother bird, you can't take the eggs until you do the shiluch haken. The Mishnah discusses if someone rents a house to his friend, and then it's a leap year. So it depends. If you rented out l'shana for the year, so then the renter gets that extra month because that's included in the year. But if you did it l'chadashim per month, well then then it's the owner who gets the extra month of payment. Now, what happens if he told them both terminologies? I'm going to pay you 12 gulden for the year, which is going to be 1 golden dinar for the month. And then they went and they made it into Ibria. So what do you do then? So then the halacha is yachloiku, you divide it because the leidin, we don't know itavas lashon rishon or lashon achar, we don't know which one's the primary. Is it the first terminology? Is the last terminology? And therefore you would just split the amounts that are responsible to be paid. To begin the current daf, on the bottom of Kuf Alpha Beis, 9 lines up at the bottom of the Amud, says the Mishnah, Hamaske bayis lechaver. Someone leases out his house to his friend. So what are the responsibilities that the landlord has and that the tenant has? So Hamaske chayev, the owner is responsible for bedelis. He has to provide a door. Beneger is to provide a bolt, which is what you lock the door with, and you stick it into the hole by the skufa, by the doorway, and ubeminal, and the lock, and anything that is requires craftsman, requires professional work, is what the landlord is responsible for. Now, but somebody that's does not require professional work, then the renter himself, it's his responsibility to do. Continues the Mishnah, Hazevel, regarding the fertilizer, which is the animal, the manure, what the animal excretes, that's in the courtyard, shabala bayis. That belongs to the owner, of the owner of the property. The Gemara is going to explain what's the case talking about. And the and the renter will not get anything to fertilize the field. Only when it comes out of the ovens and the stoves, that ashes, that's like also could be used as fertilizer. Only that he has rights to, but not to the manure that's lying over there in the courtyard. Okay, turn around, learn the brisa that elaborates on the locha ba Mishnah. If someone leases out his house to his friend, the owner is responsible. He has to put in doors, to put in windows. You can't just give him a house that does not functioning. Like tikra, let's say the roof we got wormy. The wood is all wormed up, so you have to provide it, strengthen the roof. To support the beams. Let's say one of them broke. But the renter, he's responsible. Lastly, sulam, if he wants, he has to make a ladder. Lastly, maika, to make a fence. Lastly, marzav, to make a gutter. Which all their roofs they were smoothed out with the tar, and it would be slanted from the 4 sides. So they would put these boards near the wall by the roof, so that the rain should go distant from the wall, or else it's going to ruin the walls. when one of those gutters fall, so a regular person can put it back. So again, therefore the renter has to do it. He can't say, oh, this is like, go ahead yourself and put it back. And to plaster his roof. These are things that a regular person could do that the renter, the tenant, has to do. Now, blaming the Rav Sheshes, they asked the question, Rav Sheshes, mezuzah on me. Whose responsibility is the mezuzah? You must say, mezuzah? Mezuzah, the Gemara Menachos Daf Lamed Dalman tells us, says, mezuzah is beisecha. The word beisecha means literally of your house, but it could also mean the word bi'ascha, the way you come into the house. Meaning, for the one who comes in and out, that's the one who lives there, he's responsible to put on mezuzah. What would the landlord have to do with mezuzah? Say, hey, you didn't give me a ready house, I don't have mezuzah. What mezuzah? That's your responsibility. So it says, mezuzah on me. The question was regarding the place of the mezuzah. The wood that the door closes on, it's also called the mezuzah, the doorpost. If it's stone, you have to make a hole in the crack to put the scroll inside of it. Whose responsibility is it to make the makom mezuzah? So on that, Rav Sheshes says, we learned this in our Mishnah. Our Mishnah said, anything that does not require craftsmen, so the renter, the tenant himself has to make it. It doesn't take any grace, skill set over here to carve out a little hole to put up your mezuzah, because after who, as we get into of the kanyam, it's possible to put it in a reed tube, a tube of reed, and you can just hang it over there. So it's not, you get that scotch tape. You don't have to call down the landlord to tell him, hey, I need mezuzahs. Can you come down? He says, do it yourself. Which actually, from here, Taisa says the famous machlekes Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam regarding, do you make the mezuzah standing up or on, is it vertical or horizontal? So, which Ramah says we do. Pshar we do on Bnei Ashkenaz, we do it on the tilt. But Taisa wants to bring a raya from over here that it would seem like Rashi says that you do it straight up, as we see from Gufas the Kanya. Then he says, no, you could say that even according to Rabbeinu Tam, you want it in like a reed tube so that it just doesn't get ruined from the moisture of the wall. But Al Kapanim doesn't require any major grace, much professional over here, and therefore the Seicha would have to do it himself and not call down his landlord. Now, related discussion regarding the mezuzah, turn about the Braisa. If someone leases out his house to his friend, like we said, so the renter, the tenant, he has to make his own mezuzah. Ukushu yaitz is classic halacha. You're switching tenants. When the tenant leaves, he's not allowed to take the mezuzah and leave. Now, however, menachi from a non-Jew, if he's renting from a non-Jew, he takes the mezuzahs with him and he leaves. The story with the individual should not be so he took the mezuzah with him and he left. The cover he buried his wife and his two children. Says Maisa, listen, you bring a story to contradict. Didn't you just say from a non-Jew you're allowed to? Rav Sheshes says no, a reisha. That's going on the reisha that said if you rent from a Jew, which the reisha says you now take it with your hands and leave, and that's because the Teis explains because the mazik can come in a house that doesn't have mezuzah, and therefore, although, and this Teis is on the previous amud, on the bottom of the amud, although we know that you're allowed to take tzitzis, says Shmuel, from one garment to another garment, so why can't you take a mezuzah from one house to another house? It says because the mazik can come in the house that doesn't have mezuzah. When you take it, it's as if you're mazik those who are living in the house, and if you're not allowed to leave with your mezuzahs, you have to do and figure it out with the new tenant. Says the Mishnah said, as our Gemara continues explaining, hazevel, the manure of the animals that excrete, shel balabais, that belongs to the homeowner. The renter only gets to use to fertilize what he gets from the ovens, from the stoves, those ashes he could use. So the Gemara wants to know, B'maiskin, what exactly is the case that you're talking about over here, that you're telling me that it belongs to the balabais? Let's get the case. If it's talking about that the courtyard was leased out to the renter, or let's say the oxen belonged to the renter, why would the manure, either the courtyard is his and he gets to use the manure, or it's his oxen, the manure should be his oxen's manure, why would it go to the masker? Okay, Ella, what would you say? No, we're talking about a courtyard that was not leased out to the renter, and the masker, and the oxen belonged to the owner, who did not lease it out, his courtyard. Meaning that since he didn't rent it out to him, meaning Rashi says we presume that the oxen are the maskers because it's his courtyard. So this is more pshita. Obviously, we'd go to the balbais. This is more loy tzricha. No, let's say bechatz the masker. We're talking about that. You're right. He didn't lease out the courtyard to the renter, but we're talking about where oxen that come from other places, they happen to have walked through this courtyard. Now, as Rashi tells us, stam glolim, generally, animal manure, people are mafker. Whoever's animal made, they leave it over there, and we have the flies for the next few weeks that just congregate over there. Now, the owner's chutzner acquires it for him, and that's the chiddush of halacha. Even if the renter, the tenant, he's all excited, he sees animal manure, he's going to use it, and he picks it up. He's not zeichen it because it is the chutzner of the balabais. And the Gemara says, this supports Rabbi Chanina. Because the Rabbi says, the courtyard of a person. This is the chiddush of really what the Allah is telling us, even though the Seicha gets to it first. But the courtyard of the person, which since the masker didn't rent out his courtyard, it requires him even without his awareness. Says the Gemara, really? Meisvei, the Gemara asks on that halacha from the following brayso. If a person says, any found objects that will come into my field today, I want my courtyard to acquire for me. Loy oma klum. He hasn't said anything. It's not going to work. Says the Gemara, why? He says, forget about saying anything. A person's courtyard acquires him even without his awareness. So why hasn't he said anything? You don't have to say anything. It should be automatically acquired. We're talking about a courtyard that's not protected. A non-protected courtyard does not automatically acquire for you, and therefore you would have to say something. Says Gemara, if that's the case, and that's why even if you say something that's not going to work, it's not protected. So Gemara says, wait a second. Look at the Seifa. The Brisa continues and says, if let's say the word gets out in town that a broken deer came into his field, or from the river flooded fish into his yard. So then, Dvarav, his words, which he said, I want my chatzar to acquire for me, are kayam and are valid. Says Gemara, but if you just explained to me that you told me the Bryce told me where there was a non-protected courtyard, even if word gets out there that it is a found object in his yard, how does that help anything for it to be kaina if it's not mishtameres? Says the Gemara, interesting answer the Gemara gives. Since word gets out, they said, wow, you heard what happened to this guy, Mamish, the flooded, and there's like thousands of fish in his yard. Look how much herring he's going to make for the next 3 years. Mivdil badili inshimine. So people actually stay away because that the word's out there, and like it's so well known. It's actually like a protected courtyard, even though it's not, because everyone knows about it, so no one's going to go and take it away. And therefore, that's why it's going to work in that case. But again, therefore, it's not a difficulty on Rabbi Yisrael Chanina, because you're talking about chatzah she'ein mishtameres, but if it's mishtameres, you're right, it would work that a person's chatzah would acquire from shalom midaita. But the Gemara continues asking Meitziv in the following brayso. The brayso says, Zevel hayitzim natanim nekardayim, regarding the fertilizer that comes out from an oven or from a stove, or va'akulim in aver, or if let's say he goes and he brings a bowl, and he goes to the animal and he catches the manure in the vessel from the animal before it hits the ground. So then R Shloimy, okay, these things, the renter, the tenant, he could keep these. So Tana and Karam already spoke about in the Mishnah, and now the Bryce is adding on also if you catch it in the ear space, then you could keep it. And b'sheberefes b'shebechatzer. And that which is in the barn and that which is in the courtyard, which the Gemara originally assumes, it means in a courtyard that the owner did not lease out to the renter, which will, therefore the Gemara is going to ask on this shortly. But that shall balabais. That belongs to the homeowner. Okay. The problem is, if you hold the B'Yisrael halacha, that he says that a person courtyard acquires him without his awareness. Why did you say koilet mi'aver? You told me one of the cases that the renter could keep, even though the courtyard is not leased out to him. If he catches from the airspace, why? R Shloimy, why is it his? Aver chatzeruhu. A person's chatzar is quiet from, it also includes the airspace. So what does it help by catching it in a bowl? Amabai says b'mad b'kli b'shuli parah. We're talking about where he attaches the vessel. He puts it right by the anus of the animal, and therefore there's no airspace. So it's catching it right from the animal, and therefore that's why he could keep that kolalim. Fine. Some random person. Some random person's animal was walking through the field. No, so Rashi said stam glol mafkurim. They're usually people that the animals relieves themselves. They're mafkur. They don't care for it. So the question: who's going to be koined from hefker? So that's what we're saying that he'll get it, and we're saying because there's no aver. That's one approach. Another approach, Rav Ame says no, aver shein seifel nuach regarding airspace that won't ultimately land. Lav kamunach dami, that's not like it landed, and therefore, although general will say that aver is like the chatzir, that's if it's going to ultimately land. But if it's not going to, like over here, because there's something that's going to catch it beforehand, then it's not like it landed, and therefore that's why it's not considered as part of the chatzir. So really? Did Rabbi really take this for granted? Like it was so obvious to him, and therefore he's using it as an answer? But Rava actually asked this question. The Bay Rava asked this as is brought in Daf Yud Beis. He says, Zark Arniki, if someone throws a purse and he's mafkrit, whoever gets it first, for his YouTube channel, he needs to see who's going to go ahead and catch his purse. This $5,000 purse we're throwing in the air, whoever gets it first, gets it. Okay, he throws the purse, he throws it through, he gets this propellant, projectile, it projects, it'll fly as far as it can go. He has this drone. It goes it goes in through one person's dorm room and it goes out the other one. What's the halacha? What was the question Rabbi wanted to know? Do you say the airspace is not going to ultimate land? This drone is going to continue going in a direct, literal direction. Is it like it landed, or is it not? That was the question he asked. So wait a second. He how could he use this as an answer to explain? He doesn't know if that principle applies. Says no, there's a difference. There, nothing was in the way from this drone and the ground. So then he's not sure. Maybe even though it's not going to end up landing, it's like it's munach. Hacha mifsakli. Here, the tenant is putting his bowl between the animal and the ground. So it's not just it's not going to land. There's actually a hefsik, the interruption. There he took for granted that yes, it's lav kamunach dami, and therefore that's why it's going to go to the tenant. Okay. Now, parenthetically, we had mentioned that the Gemara is going to ask. One of the cases was the way you read it translates sounds like and that which is in the barn and that which is in the courtyard. Couldn't give it talking about the manure over here in this case, the fertilizer. Oh, those harel shabalabais, that's going to go to the homeowner. Says the Gemara, Tarti? Now, as Machlekes Rashi and Tosfos have to translate the Gemara's question. Rashi says, like, both? You need to say both? Just say one. And that is, since you tell me that he's not renting out the courtyard, who cares if it's a barn over the courtyard? It's whatever it is. He's not renting it out. So just say one of them. And just say, whatever he didn't rent out goes to the owner. Tosfos actually says that, no, they actually contradict each other. Because the case of telling me the barn, you obviously did not have to tell me for it itself. Obviously, that when someone rents a house in the courtyard, he doesn't get anything rights in the barn. So it must be you tell me for the diuk. Tell me, that the barn goes to the balabais because the seich has no rights. But the chatzah, which the seich has rights to go in and out and use, that you tell me would not go to the balabais. And then you tell me that even the courtyard goes to the balabais. So whatever. That's the Gemara's question of Tarti. So Mabai says, no, hachikama. It's actually one case. It's not two. The shebedefis, shebechatzer. The barn that's in the courtyard, which is actually the chatzar, is leased out to the tenant. But all the manure in the barn that's in the chatzar, that goes to the owner, because you're right, you have no rights to the barn. You have rights to the chatzar, and yes, the chatzar would go to you, but that which is in the barn would not go to you. Now, Amar Vashi says, this tells us, if someone leases out his courtyard, unspecifically, the barn was not included in the rental. So the Gemara asks Meisvei on Rabbi Yossi. This is going back, continuing what we had mentioned before. We had Rabbi Yossi Chanina's teaching of Chatzera Shalom Koin Shalom Daiti. We're still in a series of questions on asking them from the following brisa. The brisa says Yoini Shevach v'Yoini Aliyah, regarding the doves of the dovecots, of the doves of the upper stories, which is that they look for their food in the fields, and their where they stay are in the dovecots. Which Rashi points out importantly, these are not Yoini Hardisois that grow in the house. They're more on the wild. They're not considered that which is your domestic birds. So the halacha is like this: Chayeves b'shiluach. So there's an obligation of sending away the mother bird from the nest if she's laying on the eggs, because this qualifies for what the pasuk says kiyakare. When it happens to you, a kan seeper, which means say it just happened, meaning that excludes what's called mezumin. If it's like prepared because it's yours, there's no shluch haken if it's your own birds. It's like if you happen to find a nest where here it's not mezumin because these birds are, so to speak, of the wild. So if you want to take the eggs, you have to send away the mother.
Even though they're in your barn, because of the type of bird they are.
Yeah, it doesn't say where it is. It's just saying wherever it is that you find it on your property. It's
well, your property is not
right. That's old Shiloh that some place can have. They have to be mafkared and not whatever. But it's ultimately it's not that what you prepared. It's you find it. So, but vasuch is begezel, an interesting contradiction. But it's forbidden to take these birds. Someone else, another person, would be violating theft, even though it's like it's not yours, you didn't prepare it, because ways of peace, because ultimately it's on your property. So even though it's not really yours, but we the Rabbanan, through certain cases we consider like stealing. Okay, that's the brisa. But what do we want from this? What's difficult on this? Like Rabbi Chanina. But if you hold Rabbi Chanina's halacha, the person's court requires for him without his awareness. So wait a second. Kari Khan, you should recite the pasuk that it doesn't qualify for kiyukare. It's not just random, that it's pratlamism and excludes which is prepared, because since the eggs are yours, the nest is prepared because the nest is the eggs, and that's yours. Mezuman means to say it's yours. Yikare is like, wow, you happen to be walking on somewhere and you find this thing. Oh, you have to send away the mother if you want the eggs. These are your eggs. Because your chutzner is a kind of you, even if you weren't aware, it's Shloimy Daita should require. So how do you have the halacha of the mitzvah of shiluch haken over here? So Rabbi says, okay, interesting answer. He says, the beya, the eggs, b'yitzias ruba, when the majority of it comes out of the mother bird, you can already recite what the pasuk says, oy beitzim, which it says there in the pasuk, the mother's laying on the chicks, or al habeitzim. If he was going to come to take the eggs before the mother finished laying the eggs, who is chayava lo b'shiluach? At that moment, he's chayav in shiluach of sending away the mother to take the banim. Why? Because in mikna lekanya the nafla chatzera, he didn't acquire it until it fully fell into his courtyard. Yeah. What? No, this is the guy himself. The guy himself, we're saying we want to know why would you say the mitzvah of shluach haken? Yeah. Why is the mitzvah of shluach haken? But I thought that it's yours, and if it's yours, it's not kiyakare because it's mezumin. So on that says the Gemara, no, because the moment most of the egg comes out, it's already the chiyuv of shluach haken. It's already considered, as the pasuk says, the mother sitting al ha afreichim oy hala beitzim, because you don't acquire it until it falls into your courtyard. When they would say you have to do shiluch haken, is mekmei de tibel chatzera, is before it falls into his courtyard. So then says, if that's the case, then if you're telling me it didn't fall into the courtyard yet, so then why are you telling me that there's an Isra of Gezel, but it didn't even fall into his courtyard yet? So why should there even be a Darche Shalom Gezel? So it says the Gemara, which the way Rashi says it, is A'iman. Oh, it's going on the mother. In other words, which sounds like even on the mother. The Gezel of Darche Shalom is even on the mother, the way Rashi says it, that the owner of the dovekat is still thinking about the mother because he's confident the mother is going to come back in the evening, which it generally comes back. So you're right, although he didn't acquire any of this, but since the norm is a guy expects it, so it's like in the social culture, a person says like, okay, what are you doing taking my birds? It's not even your birds, not even your eggs. But since a person expects it, Darche Shalom, ways of peace. You don't go into somebody's yard and take the bird, even though it's not his bird, and therefore that's why there's a Darche Shalom of a gezel. That's one approach. And that's what the halach is talking about, that how is there a mitzvah shluch haken if you hold B'yis B'chanina that holds that you're already zeichen. No, you weren't zeichen it yet. Or if you can say another approach. Truth is, this that we're saying that the Darchei Shalom, Gazel is going on the eggs, not on the mother. But similar to the previous answer, once most of it comes out, a person considers it as already his. You're already not really kindness yet, but you're already thinking about it, and therefore a guy comes and snatches it away. You're right. Biblically, you didn't do gezel, but rabbinically, ways of peace. A guy's saying you don't come into my yard. The second one it's about to come and take it away. Now, however, says the Gemara the following interesting implication: the hashdam Rabbi Yehuda that it says it's forbidden for a person to acquire the eggs, as long as the mother's laying on the eggs, you're not allowed to acquire the eggs. Why? Because it says in the pasuk, the pasuk says, send away the mother. Then the pasuk says, it's a then you take the children, the chicks or the eggs for you. So you're not allowed to acquire the eggs until you send away the mother. So says the Gemara, I could come up with a new approach now to answer the question based on this. I felt him. You could even say you could say that the eggs already did fall into his courtyard, and still he's chayv in shaluach haken, and it's not, as we had asked, mezuman, as long as the mother is still sitting on the eggs, and therefore it's not a difficulty on Reis B'chanina. Why? Why isn't it difficult? I thought you said that the moment it falls into your courtyard, you're koined it, and once you koined it, it's mezuman, and therefore it's not ki yikare, and therefore there shouldn't be shaluach. No. Because wherever the person himself could be zeich in it, then your courtyard automatically does it for you. But wherever he cannot be zeich in it, because we said there's an isra of shalech to shalech as an aim, so you can't get the eggs yet. So then your courtyard also cannot be zeich for you, and therefore it's not mezumin, and that's why the chiv of shlucha can. Says, wait a second, if that's the case. You told me so this is the case. You tell me it's in his courtyard, just as the mitzvah shluch again, even the courtyard is b'chadina, because since you are not allowed to be kind, your chatzah also cannot be kind. But then why you tell me it's only forbidden because of darchei shalom? I don't understand. Either shalcha, if the one who's taking the eggs sent away the mother bird, gezel ma'al yehu. It's a bona fide theft because the moment he sends away the bird, guess what happens? It automatically acquires the eggs for the owner. So if your next door neighbor goes and he sees the mother bird on the eggs, he's like, I could use some good eggs for breakfast. And there's no more eggs in the store. So he sends away the bird, and he takes the eggs. The moment he sends away the bird, poof, it's the owner's eggs. Because the only reason why I said that's not kohen leishlomidaiti was because the mother was on it. The second is right because the mother is the isser to take the eggs with the mother on it. So if he sent away the mother, now it's actually gezel ma'alya. And either lo yishalch, if he didn't send away the mother, he slips the eggs out from underneath. Habai shlucha. He has to send away the mother. In other words, there's another isser of shalech to shlech, and then esaban tikachlach. So why are you saying there's only rabbinic isra of gezel? There's an isra deraisa of shalech to shalach. So in Manav Shach, how could you say the only problem would be gezel darchei shalom based on the interpretation we're saying that it did fall into the courtyard, but the mother's still on it, and since the guy himself cannot be kind, so his chatzah cannot be kind. So I don't understand when the neighbor comes along and he takes away the eggs. Why is it only gezel darchei shalom? There should be another bigger isser, either that of gezel gomer or that of the mitzvah shalech esaim. So that says the Gemara, this that we learned, that the only problem is darchei shalom and nothing more, is talking about where that, and this is how Rashi learns, not like Taisus, that actually the neighbor did not send away the mother. But, so if he didn't send away the mother, then you're right, the owner of the property never acquired it. But we're talking about Bekatan, it was a child, the neighbor. The Labba Shiluachu, he's not chayv mitzvahs. He doesn't have to send away the mother. So therefore, that's why the neighbor is only. So the Gemara says, wait a second. So okay, fine. Then why is there even the issur of the rabbinic gezel of darchei shalom? A child is not obligated in darchei shalom either. So the Gemara says, no, this is what we're saying. The father of the neighbor, that 7-year-old kid that keeps on bothering your daughter, who jumps into your court and steals your eggs from the birds that are there. His father has to return it to him because ways of peace, because it's not going to be such friendly terms, these neighbors. So that's what we're saying with Darchei Shalom. But you're right, that's why it's wasn't acquired because there was no shiluach ha'im, and it's talking about a child who does not violate because not mechuyev mitzvah. Now look at the next Mishnah. Continue on this theme of hamasker bayis lechaveiroi. Now we're going to talk about the time period of the lease. So if someone leases his house to his friend Lashana for the year, he says, "I'm giving it to you for the year." Now, what happens if nisabra hashana? What happens if the chachamim, different than in our days where it's a set calendar, but they went and they happened to have made it into a leap year, so nisabra l'seicher. So then the intercalation is added to the benefit of the tenant. In other words, he cannot charge him for another month because the ibur is included in the shana. So he gets a bonus month of rent for that amount that he was charged. Now, let's say, however, he was leasing it per month. Okay, if we make it a leap year, so obviously the benefit now is for the owner because he charged him per month. So you have to pay for that extra month. Now, there was a story in Tzipayri regarding an individual that he leased a bathhouse from his friend, 12 gulden for the year, at that of a golden dinner per month. As we continue to base, the story came in front of these two great Torah giants. They said that they split the extra month, and the renter pays for half a month. So the Gemara asks that Maisa Lister, you're bringing a story to contradict. What does that mean? Like Rashi explains, in the first half of the Mishnah, you told me either it's all for the tenant or all for the landlord. And then you bring a story that, they're splitting. But it's either one or the other, I thought. Says Gemara, no, there's words missing in the Mishnah, and it has to say like this. The Imam Allah, if he told them, meaning, if he told them two terminologies, which, as Taisa points out, that even though Rabbi Yossi we find other places, here the terminologies are contradictory. It's either one or the other. Then yachleiku, we don't know, is the first thing you said primary? Is the last thing you said primary? Since we don't know, so therefore we're going to say that it's divided. And that's what the Mishnah brings. And there was a story in Tzipayri. They said both terminologies. He said, I'm going to rent it for 12 gulden for the year, which is 1 gulden per month. And then it became an ibriya. So now what do we do? They said, okay, we're going to divide this month because it's not clear what did he mean. Was it per the month? Was it per the year? And therefore we're going to split that rent. Now, Amar Rav says, had I been there, I would have given the benefit all to the owner, to the landlord, and he could have charged him for that extra month. Says the Gemara, my kamashmon, what's Rav teaching us with his statement? Obviously, he's telling us that that the last thing you say, which was that it's a gulden per month, that's the primary, and therefore Rav's teaching us that he would have given it the benefit to the owner. The Rav already told us this once before. Then Rav Huna said, Amri Bey Rav, they said in the Shiva of Rav the following teaching. If let's say someone says to his friend, he goes to the shuk, he says, how much you want for this? He says to him, astira, which is one type, and then he says, meyamoy, 100 prutes. And they agreed on the price. But the problem is, he said two things. He says astira, and he says 100 prutes. So halacha is the last thing that he said. Me'imoy. He owes him 100 ma. Now, let's say he says the other way around. Let's say me'imoy and astira. Oh, so then he's obligated to give him the last thing he said, which is astira, which is tafas lashon achron. So Rav already said this once before that the main thing is the last thing that he's saying. Why does he have to say it over here? Says Gemara, Ima Hasim, as Machlekes Rashi tells exactly how to translate this. But the way Rashi says, Ima Hasim, if we would say from over there, having mean that I would have said that the reason is not because that he holds up Tafas Lashon Achron. I would have said because it's all one terminology, because it's rather Pedushik Mefarish. He's explaining that this large sela, which is worth 100 prutes, when he tells him Meya Moi Astira, he wasn't telling him two different things. He was telling him, the 100 prutais that I'm giving you are inferior, which are only worth the sela that's an astira, which is what an astira is, which is what's called a sela medina, which Rashi explains is a half a dinner, which is an eighth of a sela tzuri, as the Gemara says in Bava Metzia Daf and Aleph. If someone knocks a guy in the ear, then he pays him a sela, which is a half a dinner. Now, a half a dinner is 96 prutais. Why? Because a pruta is 1/8 of an isser, and a half a dinner is 3 more of kesef, which they are 6 punyan, and the punyan is 2 isurin, 2 isarin. So it comes out 12 isarin that you have in a half a dinner. So you give for each isser 8 prutas. Comes out to be a total of 96 prutas. So when he tells him, let's say the opposite, let's say he tells him astira me'emoy. You know what he's telling him there? He's telling him this astira, this sela, which is actually worth 4 more prutas, is what I'm telling you that I'm going to give you, which is 100 prutas. Because stam mois, Rashi explains, when we're saying moi means prutas, if he didn't specify mois of kesef, because he wouldn't be able to say that it's 100 more of kesef that he's saying, because you don't have a seller like this, because even the seller tzuri is only 24 mois. Akapanim, if you only had his teaching of mei mo astiri, you would say that he's just explaining, are they good ones or inferior ones? Because again, the astira is generally 96 prutas. If you're saying 100, you're basically saying, I'm going to give you that which is higher quality. So it's either one or the other, which is qualifying that. Therefore, Kamash Malon, we need his teaching over here to say that no, it's not just because I'm explaining, even if they're contradictory, you're going to go with the Lashon Achron, therefore you needed both teachings of Rav. That's what Rav says he would have said. Now, however, Shmuel Amar, he actually says that another interpretation of the Mishnah. This of the Mishnah says, Yachloiku, that you divide it, is because we're talking about where, in middle of the extra month, they come to court. And the landlord says, get out of my house, or give me the rent for this month. Now, when we're not sure which terminology to go with, so we go with, and in general halacha we go with, what's called chazakis. We go based on presumptions or previous status. So we say hemen maman al chaskasai. We say, okay, whoever has the money gets to hold on to it. So this that he already lived in this extra month, half of it, we're not going to take away from him because maybe we go with Lashon Rishon, which we're going by the year, and then you don't have to pay for the extra month of the Ibiyah. Now, whatever did not pass yet from the month, either get out or pay for the rent. Because for that we say, Hemed Karkel Chaskasa. The property is in the chazaka of the owner. So that's where we said the halacha that you're going to split it. Where in middle of the month, he takes him to court. Aval, but let's say let's say it comes in the beginning of the month, before the extra month. Okay, then kula masker. That all goes to the owner because, like we said, the karka, which is the property, is the chazaka of the owner, and you have to prove it from him when you want it from him. But let's say at the end of the month he takes him to Bezdin, then and then it all goes to the tenant because you want to extract the money from him. No, the money is in the chazaka of the Seicher. So therefore, that's how Shmuel explains Allah of Mishnah, specifically in the middle of the month. Says the Gemara, did Shmuel say? Because again, he's not saying the way Rav said. That he's saying, oh, it's only because in the middle of the month. Did Shmuel really say that lo yimrin tafas lashon achron, that you don't go based on the last thing? If you would say like Rav, that you say tafas lashon achron, then you don't have to say it's coming in the middle of the month. You would say that if you say tafas lashon achron, then you would say, yeah, automatically that since the last thing that he said was per the month, the seicher would always have to pay no matter when they're coming to court. But the problem is, Rabbi Shmuel Damet Tavai, they both say that kur b'shleishim ani meichalach. Let's say a guy says, or kur, which is a certain quantity, I'm selling it to you for 30. So yachal achzabai, they could back out even on the last saw of the 30 saw that are in the kur, because even though the guy did Mashicha, it's not qualified as Mashicha because it's all one acquisition. Until he does Mashicha on the whole thing, he hasn't acquired anything. That's one case. That's not the main thing we want. Main thing is the next case. Let's say the guy says, kur b'shleishim, he says, okay, look, I'm going to give you a kur for 30, and sa besela, which is a smaller quantity, ani meichalach, that's what I'm selling you. So what's Allah over there? So Rav and Shmuel both say Rishon Rishon Kani. Each one first as they come, he acquires them, because since the last thing he said was sa besela, so every single sa is one acquisition, and therefore doing Mashiach on each one individually is kaina. But one thing you see is that he holds Tavas Lashon Achron. Lashon Achron. So then, anytime, whenever they came to court, since the last thing that was said was per chaydish, so it should be per chaydish. So says the Gemara, no, Hasan Taimai, the reason over there in that halacha that we just quoted from the toughest is because, like we said, he's taking each saw at it as it comes and he's holding on to it. The truth is, Shmuel actually was not sure. He was mistupik if toughest Lashon Rishon Lashon Achron. That's why he said it's only when you come in the middle of the month. Therefore, every time you would toughest each saw, we don't have the koich to extract it from him, because it will say Hemedar al Chaskasai, which is because you're holding on to it. So we don't know what the halach is, but you're the one holding on to it right now. We can't remove it from you. Achanami also, it's as if kataf is, as if he's holding, like we said, we explained with the chazakas, and therefore that's why it's specifically in the middle of the month. So it's not like he holds Tavas Lashon Achron, he wasn't sure, and therefore it's only in the middle of the month. Now, another explanation in the halacha of our Mishnah, Rav Nachman Amar, he says, Karka becheskes bala kayemes. The property always remains in the chazaka of the owner. So what is he trying to say? Like Rashi says, even if they come at the end of the month, actually all the profits of the extra month will go to the owner, to the landlord. Because as Rashi says, the suffix didn't develop right now. The suffix was there in the beginning of the month. And Hemed Karka Chaskasai, there comes out that this guy was dwelling in his friend's courtyard and he has to pay him rent because the chazaka is that it's the owners, that's landlords, not the tenants. So says the Gemara, what's Rav Nachman teaching us? That Tafas Lashon Achron, that the main thing is the last thing that he said, which was that it's per month and therefore it all goes to the owner, to the landlord, behind Rav. The same teaching as Rav. Says the Gemara, no, the chiddush that he's teaching us is Avagav the Apach Meipach. No, even if the order of what he said was the opposite. Let's say he told him originally first a dinner per month, and then he says 12 zuhuvim per year. There, Rav Nachman is telling us, which would not be the case according to Rav. According to Rav, it would be the exact opposite. Nachman is saying, no, still it all goes to the masker. Because the reason is not because he holds Tavas Lashon Achron, it's because we're not sure what actually the halacha is. And since you have a suffix, which started already in the beginning of the month, we'll say Karka B'cheske Balau, which therefore the renter has to give the money to the landlord. Now, related, the Gemara says, they asked for Rabbi the following question. What happens if Seich Amin Asati? What happens if the renter says, I gave the rent for the year? Maskama says, Lo Natalti. He says, I never took the money from you. Says who is the onus of proof on? This can happen all the time. The guy says, I paid. The guy says, you don't have the paper trail, you don't have the Zelle. What do you do? He says, I paid you cash, and he says, I never took it. Who has to prove it? That it's like they're saying. So the Gemara says, wait a second, Amos, when? If it's within the year. Now we know that Allah is schiras in mishtalemes il b'seif. As the Gemara tells us many times that we had enough samachay, that the rental is only finishes for you to have to pay only when it's over, which is the last day of the year of the rental. So then Tania, that we already learned in the Mishnah, and we'll answer that in a second. And ilachas man, if it's after the time is up, Tania we also learned that in the Mishnah. So what's the question? It's not like learning the Mishnah in regards to Bechayris. That Mesech Bechayris, the Mishnah says regarding a firstborn son. The pasuk says, "Mamid b'yutches, mibed chaydish tifti." You have to redeem the child once he's a month old. So therefore, it says the Mishnah like this: Meisa ab b'tech shleish mim. If the father died within 30 days of the child's birth, so then b'cheskes shalei nifta. We presume that the child was not redeemed. We can presume that within 30 days of the child's birth, the father didn't redeem him, because like Rashi's words are, which is the Gemara in Bava Metzia Daf, hey, halavai shiver adam chayvai bezmanai. If only a guy would pay up when the time is there, would be already in a good shape. But before the time is up, zicha, no one's paying. So what it means to say that the son, when he becomes older, would have to redeem himself. Until he brings proof that he was redeemed. But we presume that he wasn't redeemed. Now, what happens if the father dies R Shloimy Schwartzberg? After 30 days, let's say the child is 35 days old, so then we presume that the son was redeemed because the father would redeem him on time. So the presumption is that he was redeemed until the neighbors tell him that we know that your father did not redeem you, because he told us when he was dying, please make sure my son is redeemed. because Rashi points out you can't say by the kohen a terminology of yavi raya that who has to bring proof, because the kohen is not the litigant over here. If he wants to, he could tell him that he didn't give to you, he gave to some other kohen. So therefore, the wording of the Mishnah is until they tell him, meaning the neighbors. Once they tell him, so then the mitzvah is imposed upon himself to redeem himself. But one thing is that we see from this Mishnah is that what's the question? If it's within the time, we presume it wasn't paid. After the time, we presume that it was paid. So the question is that if he brings him to court, this landlord and tenant, on the day when the rental ends, and he tells him, I paid you in the morning. So it's the day when it ends. So the question is, does a person pay on the day that it ends? Or not? Is it only after it ends? So that Rabbi Yechon said to them, we will learn this in the Mishnah later on, Daf Kofiyat Aleph and Aleph. As we continue down with Kof Gimel and Aleph, Sacher, a tenant, bizmanoi, if on the day, actually not a tenant, a hired laborer, a guy who is hired to do a job, an employee, bizmanoi, if the day that he's finishing the job, he's coming to collect his paycheck, the halacha is nishba, he swears that he didn't get paid yet, the noitel, and he takes the payment, which Rashi points out this is what's one of the cases that are unique exceptions called nishba ben noitlin. Shigmar and Shvuas and Medal and Beis explains generally the halacha is the one who's the defendant swears and he doesn't pay. There are some exceptions that you swear and you collect, which are chomer masakin, that we take the shvuah from the balabayis, from the employer, and we put it on through the sachar to the employee. The reason for that is very simple, because the balabayis is very busy with his workers. He thinks he gave to this guy when he really gave to the other guy. So since he's not going to be able to realize, so we put it onto the employee. But one thing is, says the Gemara like this: Sachahu d'Rama Rabbanan. It's specifically by the employee that the Rabbanan went and imposed a shvuah on him. Why? Like we said, Mishum the Balabais Tarbapila, because the employer is very busy with all his workers, he's not going to know. So that's when we have the shvuah on the employee. But over here, but in general, even on the day of when the timing is up, Seicher, the renter of the house, mehemen b'shvuah, he would be believed with an oath. In other words, like generally, the defendant is the one who swears. It's just like that's a unique exception over there by employee, where the guy's too busy and they won't realize. But in this case, because we're giving it's exactly the halacha b'yomi de mishlim zamnei, it's the day when it ends, he's believed to say, I paid you already. And like Rashi explains with the rabbinic oath that the Chum imposed on someone who is not moed mixes, where the guy's not admitting partially, he's like, I paid you. So it's saying over here that the renter, the tenant, is believed to say that he paid already, as we see that that's really what the halacha would be by the employer also. Really, the employer would be able to swear also that I paid you already. It's just that he's going to be too busy and he's not going to realize, so therefore we took the shvuah from him, we gave it to the employee, but really, the guy is believed to say, I paid you, and he swears to that effect. That's the same thing over here, that we believe the renter, the tenant, that he paid already in the morning if he swears to that effect. Thank you anytime for hosting us.